Carlo D'Angelo, whom I mentioned earlier, gentle, soft-spoken director there in New York, one of the early big-time directors. Carlo D'Angelo, Gordon White, the days of the early big-time programs. Carlo was directing the Al Jolson show from the control room. And during rehearsal one day, they finished a skit, and Carlo punched the talk back and said, "Al," Jolson, "Yeah, what do you want?" He said, "Al, I think if you accent the word groom in that last gag, you might get a little bigger laugh." Jolson said, "Who the hell do you think you are, you little Dago son of a bitch, telling Jolson how to read his lines? Look, Buster, I've been in show business too many years. I know all about it. And I've got $7 million to prove it, and what do you got?" Friends, Al. Of course, he was through on the show, but he'd scored.
This is the Kraft Music Hall, starring Al Jolson, with Oscar Levant, Lou Bring and his orchestra and chorus, and our guest, Dorothy L'Amour.
So keep on looking for a bluebird and listening for its song. Whenever a little shower come along. Folks, this is Al Jolson of the old Kraft Music Hall. Well, today is Thanksgiving, and we all have a lot to be thankful for. I know today when I sit down to my Thanksgiving dinner, I'm going to bow my head and give thanks for the food that I eat, thanks for the clothes that I wear, and thanks for Larry Parks. And I'm especially thankful that you like to hear me sing, because there ain't nothing I want to do more. Come on, Lou, let's take it. When the wintry winds are blowing and the snow is starting to fall.
Earlier in 1947, Bing Crosby and ABC signed Al Jolson to a $50,000 contract for 10 Philco Radio Time guest appearances. Jolson showed up for just one when he signed another contract to host Crosby's former NBC show, the Kraft Music Hall. Bing Crosby was forced to rely on a mix of movie star guests and drop-ins from other ABC shows. In a season of inflated ratings, Crosby lost 20% of his audience, falling out of the season's top 50 for the first and only time. The Kraft people weren't complaining. In the 3 seasons since Crosby's acrimonious departure from NBC, Kraft had seen its music hall rating cut in half. Meanwhile, Al Jolson was hot again after the success of his film biography, The Jolson Story, which earned 6 Academy Award nominations and won 2 Oscars. It proved to be a good investment. The 60-year-old singer pushed the show's rating back into first place on Thursday, and a return into the season's top 20 with a rating of 18.9.
Don't be late off. That's why I can hardly wait. Come on, Louis. Open up. That's Golden Gate, California. Here I come.
Johnny was just naturally funny, you know. He thought funny. Then John Dietz, who was our director, on Casey Crime Photography. He was tired of the same stick. He was a little bit pixelated, too, you know.
The Anchor Hocking Glass Corporation brings you Crime Photographer.
Say, Casey, do you think they'll ever put my statue in the Hall of Fame?
What are you famous for, Ethelbert?
For 27 straight years, I always got the same part of the turkey. That's some kind of a record, ain't it?
Well, because you consistently get it in the neck, that might make you notorious, but not really famous.
No, Ethelbert. You know, you have to do something really big, something important to deserve a famous name.
Like what?
Well, like Anchor Hocking, the most famous name in glass.
At 9:30, opposite the Sealed Test Village store on NBC, Casey Crime Photographer took to the air live, coast to coast, over all CBS stations.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tony Marvin. Every week at this time, the Anchor Hocking Glass Corporation of Lancaster, Ohio, and its more than 10,000 employees bring you...
By the late 1940s, the show had established itself as a primetime hit. During the 1947-48 season, it had a rating of 15.6.
Our adventure for tonight... After Turkey, the Bill.
It starred Stotts Cotsworth as Casey and was then sponsored by Anchor Hocking. Although by 1947, Stotts was entrenched as a primetime star. He also retained the male lead in the daytime melodrama, Front Page Farrell.
A dressed young man pushes aside his empty plate and says to the pretty girl who sits opposite,
Hey, that turkey wasn't half bad.
You didn't leave much of it.
Neither did you. Shall I order dessert now?
Uh-huh.
Hey, waiter. Gus,
Okay, kid. What do you want now, Joe?
we're ready for the plum pudding now.
2 plums pudding.
That's what you want, too, isn't it, Lottie?
Yes, and coffee.
Same here.
Okay, kid.
I don't know why you won't let me do anything for you in a classy way, Lottie. I asked you out for a Thanksgiving spread, and you made me bring you to a cheap place like this.
Joe, you can't afford to throw your money away.
How do you know what I can afford? I may not have as good a job as my cousin Bird yet, but that doesn't mean
What's Bird got to do with
He's
it?
got plenty to do with it. If you didn't have to work today, you'd be out with him now instead of me, I know.
Bird isn't working tonight, Joe. He came home before we left there. I could have had dinner with him if I'd wanted.
Yeah.
Oh, don't be like that, please.
Why shouldn't I be? While I was away, you and him became awful good friends.
We were always friends, the three of us. We grew up on the same block.
Yeah, but while I was away, he moved into your old man's rooming house so we could be closer friends.
Oh, don't start that again tonight. We're out for a pleasant evening, and it has been pleasant so far. Please, Joe.
All right. Comes out dessert.
2 plums pudding. And coffee.
You know, when you go out with me, Lottie, you're going to get class whether you think I can afford it or not. I'm going to take you to Danceland. I'm going to buy you a whole roll of tickets. Best you'd get out of that tightwad fur is a soda and a movie. All right, that's all now, Gus. Bring me a check, will you?
You said it, Joe.
All right, Joe, since you won't drop the subject, we'll talk about Bird.
Swell.
He wants me to marry him.
Figured that from that dirty double-crosser.
He isn't a double-crosser.
He knows I've been going with you since we were kids, that I've always been crazy about you. And while I was taking that bum rap in the reformatory...
You didn't take a bum rap, Joe. You asked for what you got.
All right, so the cops had the goods on me. That gave Bird no right
It
to...
gave me a right to do a lot of thinking.
So you decided a sneaky yellow drip like my cousin is a better bet than me, huh?
I don't think Bird is sneaky or yellow.
You don't, huh?
No. And I don't think you're a criminal.
It's nice of you to say that.
I'm not being nice. I'm saying what I believe. If you make me sure you've learned your lesson,
Yeah?
well, you won't have to worry about me liking Bird or anyone. There's never really been anybody but you, Joe. Only I've got to be sure.
How do I make you sure, Lottie?
Just show me and Dad that you're steady, that's all.
And I've been showing you that since I came back. Didn't I get a job right away?
Yes, Joe, but I don't see how you can afford those 2 new suits and that overcoat with what you're making.
Oh, I get it. Bird can buy clothes or take you out, and it's okay, isn't it? He's never had trouble with the cops. But the minute I spend an extra buck, you and your old man figure I've glommed it somewhere.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Your old man especially. Hates my insides. He don't want you to have anything to do with it.
If Dad hated you, he wouldn't let you stay at our rooming house.
He rents rooms and I pay for the one I rent. That's business. And to ease your mind about the extra dough I spent, Lottie, I'm a lucky guy with dice and a good pool player.
Here's your check, kid.
Thanks, Gus. Pay you so we can get out of here. We're going to Dance Land. What?
Joe?
I haven't got my wallet.
Oh, you've lost your money?
I don't know. Maybe I left it home.
Well, phone Dad. He'll look in your room.
Well, if he found it, I'd have to go there for it. It's only a few blocks. You stay here, Lottie, while I go and see.
Oh, you don't have to leave the lady here, kid. You're an old customer. I know you come back and pay.
Well, thanks, Gus, but I can make better time alone. Hand me my overcoat. Even that racket's the blue in there.
Sure. Oh, it's a fancy coat. Nice and bright with red stripes. You got a class, kid.
Yeah, but right now I got no dough. I'll come back as soon as I can, Lottie.
I hope you find your money.
Yeah, I hope so, too. And how?
Gee, Casey, it's nice of you and Miss Williams to have Thanksgiving dinner here in the Blue Note with me.
We're nice people, Ethelbert.
Well, the very best. True, warm-hearted, and generous to a fault. Pass the salt.
Also
Paul.
honest, kind, and steadfast. Here's the salt. And
Sure.
pepper.
You know, we're really understating our sterling qualities, Annie. We've risen to the heights of magnanimity, whatever that is, by chewing Thanksgiving turkey in this crummy joint we see every day, simply because our little pal here had to work. He could only get away from his bartending long enough to grab a meal on the house. We hope you appreciate our sacrifice, Ethelbert.
Oh, I do.
Good. Pardon my reach for the Tabasco. To prove your gratitude, Ethelbert, you can pay for our dinners.
Yeah, well...
Tabasco, Annie?
Huh?
Thanks. Hey, you've made a splendid suggestion, Casey. Paying our bill will relieve Ethelbert of a small part of his obligation for our company.
Yep.
Say, come to think of it, you two are working today yourselves. You didn't have time to get a full meal any further away from your office than this crummy joint.
Ethelbert, you impugn our motive. He destroys my faith in human nature, Casey.
Yes. The spirit of the day is entirely lost upon this lug.
Casey, if you'd pay me what you already owed this crummy joint, I'd be only too happy to buy you dinner. Get it, Walter?
This guy's too wise for us, Annie.
I'm afraid so, Casey.
Casey,
Yeah, Walter?
you wanted the bar phone, you said it did.
Oh, nuts. I'm only just finished my turkey.
No, this means no dessert, Casey.
I'll see what Burke wants.
Well, stall him off if you can.
Yeah, I'll do my best, Annie. Hello, Grace. Hello, Casey speaking. Look, Burke, we haven't finished our dinner yet. Oh, all right. Wait till I get my pencil out. Corner of Whitestone and Evans. Well, what happened there? What, is that all? For a run-of-the-mill story like that, we gotta leave our dessert? Well, okay, Burke, all right, goodbye. Why I stick to this newspaper racket, I don't know.
What was it, Casey?
All the Look, we gotta get out to Whitestone and Evans, Ann. Some mug just held up a filling station there and got away with a couple of $100 or so.
Did he shoot anyone?
No.
Huh?
Just one of those inside page fillers. Burke says news is light and we gotta cover it.
All right, where is Whitestone and Evans?
Way uptown, not far from Petrakis Olympian Restaurant. You know, we've eaten there a couple of times.
Yeah, I remember. Any description of the hold-up guy?
Yeah, he wore a flashy blue overcoat with red stripes. See you later, pal.
So long, Ethelbert.
So long. Say, wait! Who's gonna pay for this crummy joint?
Our story will continue in just a moment.
The program announcer was Tony Marvin. Years later, he recalled the CBS interview process.
Well, it was murder. It was absolute murder. After all, you know, in those days, I think even today, of course, why should it change? When an announcer has an opportunity to come down and audition for the big networks, well, you know you were really in the big leagues. And they had an announcer's audition that took at least 45 minutes to an hour. And you had to have a minimum of 3 to 5 years' experience in the field prior to that. You had to have a working knowledge of 2 other languages, primarily French, German, because you did a lot of symphonic work. You did operatic work, and you also had to be fast on your feet. They'd lock you in a studio after you'd gone through a list of things from Mussorgsky to Beethoven and all the rather esoteric types of symphonic and operatic music, and you had to be conversant with that. And then they say, all right, now you have 10 minutes. We want you to describe the studio in minute detail, just what it is in there. Just what you think. If you were locked in this room for 10 minutes, how would you occupy or tell someone about the cell you're incarcerated in, you know. And then after that, of course, then they gave you news that you read cold. It was just handed to you, now go. When you got through, you knew that you had been put through a bit of a ringer. In my case, I was called into the production office. They said, well, you've been accepted, and you will start on such and such a date. And I remember I almost fainted because I was going to become a member of the CBS staff. And I still love CBS. After all, it's my alma mater. But I remember dashing to the nearest phone booth and calling my wife, saying, honey, guess what? I got a job.
That's a beautiful feeling.
Yes, it was. It was marvelous. I'll never forget it. And, of course, the money was magnificent.
That's right. They paid big money in those days for staff work.
I want to tell you, when you were a staff announcer at CBS or NBC in those days, you were rolling in wealth. You started out at $50 a week. And if you were a good boy and did your job well, at the end of 5 years, you now got $75 a week.
Grease in front of this door, Jones, when the hold-up guy locked you in? Oh, yeah. I spilled it there earlier, and I hadn't enough time to clean it up.
And the mug must have stepped in it, Casey. Along with the description of his flashy coat I've sent out, I included instructions to look for a guy with dirty grease stains on his shoes.
Well, the two things together ought to nail him, Sarge. Yeah, I told the Sarge here's something else that ought to nail a guy.
What's that?
Well, one of the bills he stole out of the money drawer was an old 20 that had been torn in two and kind of stuck together with Scotch tape. I took it in just before the robbery, so I remember it.
Well, looks like you cops have plenty to work on, Sarge.
Yeah.
Well, we got all there is, Annie. Let's blow out of here, get back to the Blue Note, get some plum pudding and coffee.
Aha, come on.
Hey, ain't you going to take my picture first?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll kind of stand here by the empty cash drawer, and point my finger at it.
Yeah, that'll be original. Well, stand and point, pal. Go ahead.
Great.
All set now. Shoot.
Jones.
Yeah, hey, Gus, I'm getting my picture took. Don't walk in front of the camera.
I have just heard what happened to you. About that guy in the blue overcoat which holds you up.
Well, I'll tell you all about that later, Gus. As soon as I get my picture.
No, I tell you and those cops about it now.
You'll tell.
Who are you?
Oh, I am Gus Nikopopoulos. I am waiter in Petrakis Olympian restaurant 3 blocks from here. And I know who is the kid who robbed my good friend Jones.
You know?
Yeah, I know as soon as I am told the news about that fancy overcoat.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
I tell you cops everything. Even where to find this hold-up kid. He tell me he is going with his girl to Danceland.
John Gibson played Ethelbert, the bartender at the Blue Note Jazz Cafe.
We put Crime Photographer on at CBS when I don't think more than 20 people saw it. But we worked as hard as if it had been for an audience of 100 million. It was a half-hour telecast done very legitimately, and it was in 1945, and that was my first. One of the executives at CBS called me back a few days later, and he said, we've decided we'd like to do a series of this on television. And I said, well, good, let me know when it's on. I'd like to watch it. And that was my attitude. I hated it.
So, the shoes fit Joe, and he had to wear them, huh, Casey?
They pinched so tight he cracked wide open, Ethelbert. He admitted planting a duplicate of his coat in Ferd's closet, everything.
If his scheme had worked, Lottie would never have spoke to Ferd again, and she'd have married Joe.
Well, that was Joe's idea, Ethelbert, but it worked out in reverse. Lottie sank into Ferd's manly arms when she heard the lowdown, and she seemed very comfortable.
Gee, what some guys will do for love. As my sister Edna says, quote, if love didn't make the world go round, there wouldn't be so much dizziness. Unquote.
Or so much niceness.
Yeah. A grand guy, Lottie's old man. Hey, Annie, what's the matter with us? We got plum pudding and coffee still coming to us. How about it, Ethelbert, huh?
Oh, it's about time.
Well, what's so funny?
There isn't any more.
Crime Photographer, starring Stotts Cotsworth as Casey, is brought to you each Thursday by the Anchor Hocking Glass Corporation, makers of Fire King oven glass, Anchor glass containers, Anchor caps and closures. All products of Anchor Hocking, the most famous name in glass.
Just 2 years after placing only one program in Thursday's top 10, CBS pulled even with NBC, thanks to their strategy featuring original dramatic shows.
Crime Photographer is directed by John Dietz. The original music is by Archie Blyer, and the program features Miss Jan Miner as Anne and John Gibson as Ethelbert. Herman Chittison is the Blue Note pianist. This is Tony Marvin saying goodnight for the Anchor Hocking Glass Corporation of Lancaster, Ohio, with offices in all principal cities of the United States and Canada. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.